Hey there, Russ here. Welcome back to the shop. Today, I want to talk about, over the next 3 videos, we're going to make in real time, we're going to make one video, this spline, or this miter, key miter joint, and this spline miter joint, otherwise known as gust joints. We're going to make those on our table saw. The first step is, I like to make ahead of time lots of blank material. And what is blank material? I use the same blade whether I make the dado that goes in this for the spline or the same size dado cut if I'm doing a key mitered. It's the same size, 1/4 inch. My blade is always set to a 1/4 inch on my dado stack in my other saw. And if you don't have 2 saws, that's okay. You can do most of your cuts with the one saw, change out your blade, and then do all your curve cuts at a 1/4 inch. As long as you use the same blade setup every time and you know what that setting is, you'll be fine. And if you don't, you could set it up, run a curve through, do a measurement, go through the process to set up and do a thin strip. And I always cut a test piece when I set up, just a little piece, so that I know that it fits properly in my curve. So, how do I do this? So today we're going to concentrate on making the blank material that you need in order to make splines and keys. So here's what we got. We're going to take and make the splines out of OSB and a little bit out of hardwood. So let me set my saw up, and you won't be able to watch me anymore. You're just going to be able to see what I'm doing here at the table saw. And I have this set up now so you can see this. And I'm going to take and use this for my test piece and cut it to the exact size to fit this curve, which it does not fit at this point. I can't really get it in there. So, how do we do that? I'm going to use only this and a magnet to set up my saw. So I raise my blade up. In this case, I'm just going to raise it all the way because I want to make as wide a blank as I can. And I bring my saw over, my table fence over. That's touching, but it's just a little too hard. Now, I'd say this is now set to 0. So, I set this to 0. I'm going to put a spacer in here just to keep this from accidentally going under my fence. And I set this up here. Now you take a magnet and set it up right at the end. So this is sandwiched in between the fence and your magnet. I want to make sure that it doesn't move if I try to move it back left or right, and it's tight, but I can take it in and out. Very easy. Whoops. Gotta go straight. I can take it in and out as long as I keep it straight when I do it. So now I know this is 0. So now let's take my dial indicator, my dial caliper, and I'm going to set it to 1/4 inch. Like so. And now I'm going to set this back in here. But it doesn't fit in there. It's still up. So now, to get this set, I just loosen my fence gently, and I move this over. And I'm just tapping on it, sending it over. And as of right now, that sets in there nice and snug, but it comes out and goes in. But yet it doesn't move. So, now I am actually set to that dimension right here. Now, let's test it. Let's see if I got the right setting. So, I'm going to start it up, and we're going to do a test cut. Because this material is so thin, I can't use my normal pad on the outside like this, because it probably will skim the blade. If I was using thicker material, I would do it with this pad holding that against the fence flat. But because of what I have here, by this being nice and wide, I still have control over it. The only thing I have to concentrate on is to make sure the bottom stays against there. So with my thumb here, still well away from the blade, we're going to make this cut. And let's check that cut. First try. I don't think you can ask for more than that on the first try. So, I now have the thickness. If I want this piece, I would then take my saw, move it over, and cut this loose right here so that this would be my blank and I'd have this leftover waste material. Now, we have our set, so let's do this. Instead of cutting from plywood, let's take real quick, and I'm going to take a 3/4 inch piece of solid wood here. This is pine, okay? Now, this is also only about 2.5 inches wide, so I think that what I'm going to do is I'm going to lower my blade a little bit because I don't really want to come too close to this upper edge. So I'm just going to lower it. We don't need quite as thick a blank. So we'll just say right there. Now, because this is 3/4 inch material, I know this blade isn't going to come out on this surface. So I'm going to put this in here, my push pad, my OTB gripper. Put it here, and let's make a cut. Now, flip it, and let's make a cut. And now, I want to cut it free. So I lower my blade, and I'm going to set this fence. And now we're going to make this cut. Looks like that's the way I want it. Oops. Let's try this again. Okay. Let's make sure we're in the black. Let's make this cut. Now I'm holding this, pushing against the fence, and I'm pushing down into this corner. I don't want to put any pressure out here particularly, so all my pressure is pressuring on the solid part of this. And we'll come cut this loose. And just that quick, I have 30 inches. That's the scrap. And I have 30 inches of key material that I can now use to make miters and keys. So, just that quick and easy. I did this out of one piece of wood, and I can actually put this back in my scrap pile now. Actually put them both back in there. Now, if you remember, most people, when they cut these units away, for some reason, they always cut the material down to what they want. Then they start putting it through like this and have to feed it through very carefully, and they're working with a tiny piece. You noticed that I had a much larger piece. Then I cut my pieces free. This is a much better way of making a proper cut safely to make material that you can then use as keys and as splines. Quick and easy. And as you saw, with just nothing more than a caliper and a magnet, I'm able to set this up any dimension I want, and I can get an accurate dimension to cut any kind of strip I want. I always make sure I start with a really solid material. So let's take a look at making this. I'm a big fan of doing this with plywood. So let's do this. I'm still set up here. This hasn't moved. So I can come back in here and set this up. bring this in, lock it down, and take this out. So now this is set to where it was. So now I'm still going to get my 1/4 inch piece. But instead of cutting it with a piece of hardwood, I'm going to make 8 pieces out of this here. So 7, 8. Yeah. So watch how I can take this piece and make a whole bunch out of this little tiny piece here, then nothing flat. I have it set up. I take my pad, hold it here to get that out of the way, and let's run this through. I'm going to raise my blade all the way up so I can get the widest one I can get since my piece is so tall. This is going to help hold it flat against my fence, and this hand is going to control the piece. You ready? So let's cut this. And now, so I'm going to set this to 1 3/4 inch right there. That should give me what I'm looking for. So now let's lower this down, and let's make this cut. Now I'm going to keep this kind of in the center and gently hold it against here when I make this cut. Ready? My bad. Just that quick. And here we go. We have perfectly cut pieces that fit both here and there. And now I have my spline material that I can set aside when I'm ready. A little quick sanding and it's ready to be used. So now that I have all this cut, I can throw this back in my scrap bin or throw it away, whatever I want. All the rest of this. Say these somewhere where I know they're at, because I know these are dimensioned to exactly what I want when I'm ready for it. And that quick and easy, I have now cut quite a bit of material. And I'll tell you, if you wanted to, you can just take a long piece like this and run it through 4 times. By flipping it 4 times and do the same thing and end up with 4 long pieces. I can get 8 feet out of this piece and I'll end up with this piece left over that's going to be all about 1.5 inches wide. And I can do what I want with that piece. And I'll come out with some good pieces that are nice and long and the same exact dimension as these if I want. If they're not quite exactly right, or if I got a little bit of roughness on the edges, all I do is I just get my sandpaper out, and I can sit here and sand them all day long. Put it down on a piece of sandpaper and then sit here and sand these down any way I want, quick and easy, to clean them up so that I can use them. So they're easy and they're just about ready to use at this point with just a little bit of sanding cleanup. That's how you make your splines. If you start with tiny material like this and try to cut your splines, this is really hard to control as you go through. The key to it is to use a wider piece and cut your keys loose when you're done. So now you see that because I use the same blade for all my kerfs, whether I'm cutting this joint or this joint, it doesn't matter. I use the same blade to make the joint cut. Therefore, I can use the same blank material for both of them. So I can pre-cut this stuff and leave it ready to go for when I need it. So anyway, that's how you do it. Make sure your board is wide enough to do this job. And that's how you cut thin strips on your table saw. So one more quick thing right here. And you say, well, I don't have a fancy magnet like that. That's okay. I can do the same thing with this. This is a magnet strip from Harbor Freight. I paid $2 for that. And if I wanted to, I could do the same thing with this that I did with that. And I get the same result with a simple little magnet like this that I did with that other one. So, any magnet will work. You do need some kind of caliper. Excuse me, a sliding caliper. A dial caliper is nice to have for this situation. You could do it with a simple, inexpensive veneer caliper if you wanted to. So, tell me what you think. Tell me how you think I can improve this method. If you like this or if you have any suggestions or ideas, leave them in the comments. As always, I do read them all. If you have a question or anything, I almost always respond to those, unless I know you're just pulling my leg. So anyway, 2 more videos to go. And on those 2 videos, I'm going to make this joint. What's that joint called? No, it's not a gust joint. That's a keyed miter joint. Or this joint. The spline, the miter spline joint. Or spline miter joint. So, anyway, when I show you how fast I can make these, now that I have material, I can make these joints pretty fast. And I'll show you that over the next 2 videos. So, be ready for that. That means you do have to come back. If you learned something here, or you like this video, hit that like button. If you didn't like this video, but you learned something here, hit that like button. It still lets me know at least I'm doing something right. Most importantly though, if you would, please come back because I'm nowhere near done. Thanks, and we'll see you again very soon.